Hello, everyone, and welcome to this breaking news episode of the Rogue Deck Chronicles. I know last week we kind of said that we were going to take a break with it being summer with our work schedules, but we had some last minute announcements that we thought it was, well, just worth talking about. So, of course, it's me, Dean, and I have Devin with me. How you doing, Devin?
Doing good. I mean, like you said, you and I were definitely planning this week to kind of just take a week off and relax. But when this article dropped that we're going to talk about today, we were like, all right, this is important. And it's not because our article dropped and we just want to talk about an article. It's what the article released to us that we definitely need to talk about, especially with some of it being very time sensitive.
Yes. So one of the news. So before we say anything else, Pokemon released an article, and it's a public article. So if you go to Pokemon.com, right now there's a little. Sorry, y'all. There's a little box that will talk about changes in the championship series. So you click on that, you can read the article for yourself.
Yeah,
But it
in future editing, Devin will also put the article link in the description of the show notes and of the video, so that way you guys can go to either one of those sources and just look at the article after we talk about it, because it's one of those situations where for a competitive or someone who wants to get into the competitive scene of the trading card game, this is something very important because, like we said, some of it's very timely and it's coming to effect in the beginning of July, which we didn't expect any announcements to happen during the summer. But with this happening and this kick-starting a new competitive season, we thought it would be very important to talk about it now.
exactly, and that was one of the points in the article was like, hey, the new season is starting July 1st, not beginning, July 1. So next week, which at the time of recording is Tuesday.
Yeah,
So really soon, which honestly, no one was shocked about that portion of the article. We always knew it was going to be in July. Whether it be the first or second week, no one really cares because some of the stores have already been scheduling their events. So a lot of us that's already in the know knew. That part is not what is surprising. It's just there's a lot of other information that came out. So first, as we said, the challenges and League Cup start dates starts on July 1st. For TCG, which is what we do, if you play VG, that's not going to start until September. We're not really going to touch on that. I'm sure there's reasons why. But for us being a TCG podcast, next Tuesday as date of recording, be on the lookout to look for cups and challenges at your local shops because you can start being competitive once again.
yeah. So shop local scenes, so cups challenges will be able to do their monthly and quarterly rotations starting at the beginning of the new quarter in July 1st. It's one of those situations where trading card historically has always had a longer competitive season than video game. Video game has always started later. Most of the time, it revolves around either our hardware of a new console or hardware of a game. But I don't see Legends ZA being the competitive video game for the upcoming season. Legends Arceus wasn't, so it's going to be a Scarlet and Violet, and they just probably want to time for people to get the Switch 2. Because I have a feeling with September 1st, they're going to allow Switch 2 consoles on tournaments for major levels.
Exactly, and I think the reason why they didn't do it for NEIC and maybe for not for Worlds is if you do compete in the VGC side, they provide the docks, so it's going to take some time for the organizers to get these docks because new console. I'm sure the equipment is not cheap,
No.
so that's a really big hit to their budget. So they're probably just waiting to see, okay, hey, what do we need to do? What does the player base have? Can we allow both? Again, we're not a VGC podcast. We know friends that play it. I do enjoy some of the Wolfie Glick videos, not going to lie. But in terms of what that is about, we're not going to talk about it because there's no way for us to really know. We're not in that community as much. Um, with that, with locals coming back, it means that we get regionals coming back, and they did announce some regional locations,
Mhm.
and they announced all 3 international championship locations.
Yeah. So for the international championships, no changes to locations, and the time of the years are the same. So Latin America will still be hosted in Sao Paulo, Brazil. European internationals will be hosted in London, and the North American internationals will be hosted in New Orleans. Unfortunately, no Oceania internationals coming back. I think it's going to be a lot more growth needed for the Oceania region for them to get their international back. But they did do something for the Oceania region that we haven't seen, I think, pretty much ever, if not a very long time.
Yeah, and that goes into announcing the regionals. So some of the regionals have been announced. North America, they've announced like 4. And EU, they've announced like 8 or so. LATAM, I didn't pay attention to that, but they did announce one oceanic region or one regional, and it's not in Australia. It's in New Zealand, of all places.
Yeah, and I think that is very important. I think with Oceania losing its international championship a couple years ago, giving them more representation on the regional or special event side is just as important than ever.
Yeah, we all know that the Australians are very competitive and some of the top players are from that country. But once in a while, you'll see some New Zealand people do well in the Australian tournaments. So I'm really glad that New Zealand has their own regional. It'll
Hmm.
be good for that country's player base as well because traveling from New Zealand is very difficult. So they probably don't have the resources that a lot of us take for granted when it comes to the areas we can travel to compete. So the fact that they can go to that country and play in a local regional, I think that's huge for not just for that player base, but also for the Oceania region in general.
Yeah, so that um, Oceania Regional is going to be in Auckland, New Zealand. It is the same weekend as Birmingham and as Merida again. So that weekend is going to host 3 major tournaments in 3 different regions: North America, Europe, and in Oceania. So pretty much this is going to be a situation, and I'm looking at the general scheduling right now, where Pokemon is overloading it certain weekends of the year to have multiple major events happening to spread the player base out around the world, and I think that's very smart for Pokemon. I think if they try to give every single special event and regional a weekend to itself, it puts too many players into the same pot, and we don't get to see the other players shine. And I think with this kind of overload style weekend, when there's 3 regions, 3 events, the players have to pick and choose where they want to go, and you're going to see more people be able to shine and show off their skills compared to maybe one regional and every top player going to that one regional.
I agree. I know some of the top players, excuse me, in NA traveled a lot. One example is Rahul Reddy traveled to Australia. He traveled to Europe several times. He went to almost every tournament in North America. And having the multiple tournaments at the same time limits where you have to go. You have to choose which one you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
What I would like to see is that the Latin America and the Oceania regionals have some sort of stream, whether it be Pokemon Ram, which most likely not, but even just a grassroots organization. Like, hey, can we stream this? We know players are interested. I know a couple of people in the Pokemon trading card community have offered their services, and ultimately it's up to the TL as always. But it'll be nice to see more local representation of these players, and not just and just not see them on the North American or European stage alone.
Yeah, and some of the limitations is venue based. Like not like you and I are very fortunate to be in the United States where Wi-Fi and fiber is a thing, and these venues have very strong internet connections. Obviously, not everyone does. So it
Hmm.
is they're a victim of the location, and that's why we were able to see some European streams versus not the Latin American streams or the Oceania streams, and it's because of the resources, right? The TO may want to, and there may be people who want to do it, but just the resources and the capabilities aren't there. So it's just sometimes they're a victim of circumstance, but I 100% agree. I wish that more of these non-European, non-North American tournaments get streamed and broadcasted by some form of streaming service or media of so we can consume it as players. But that's only going to happen and grow over time. Hopefully, that the resources are there. Um, I think all regions are definitely getting a fair shake in terms of the preliminary announcements, knowing that more events are going to be announced the deeper and deeper we get into the season.
Exactly. So with the announcement of regionals and internationals, there's a couple changes when it comes to the actual tournament itself.
Mm-hmm.
So one change, which is not the biggest thing in the world, it's kind of more of a, I guess a correction, I will say, is that they're sorry, not adding, they're adjusting the Swiss tournament rounds.
Yes.
So if you remember 2 seasons ago, we did 8, 9 rounds on day one, depending on how many people were in the tournament, and then you did 6 rounds of day two.
Mm-hmm.
Last season, they adjusted that. 8, 9 rounds, day one, depending on how many people were in the tournament, and then only 4 rounds of day two with asymmetrical top cut up to 32 people. We never really reached that. We were close, but I think the most we've ever gotten was like either 16 or 17.
Mm-hmm.
For the 2025-2026 season, they're adding an additional round in day two. So instead of 4 rounds, you're playing 5 rounds.
Yep.
With a asymmetrical top cut up to and capped at 16 players. So kind of a compromise of 2 years ago and 2 seasons and then last season. All this is for all age divisions with at least 65 participants. So in the Masters, that's not going to be an issue at all. At the regional level, I don't even think that's going to be an issue for junior and seniors. So I say this is going to happen at every single major event for the next season.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's a compromise more than it just made sense. So
Yeah.
4 rounds, day two in Swiss did nothing, and everyone knew it would do nothing. If you were in the bottom half of day two, you had zero chance of making this asymmetrical top cut, even if you would go 4-0.
Yeah.
So the fifth round isn't necessarily going to have give the person who squeezed into day two at X21, right, an opportunity to make the top cut, but it will give them an opportunity to make top 64 or top 128 better. Because there was a certain point where the math just was like, all right, I made day two, cool. I'm kind of stuck in this zone of top 256, but I can't make top 128. Like they just, no matter how good or bad they did, they were kind of stuck at their point zone.
I would actually argue that with the change of the fifth round, someone that comes in X21, it's either 5-1 or 6-1, if they go 5-0, I would say they do have a chance to make top 8. Because if you go 11-1, that's a pretty good record. Granted, you're not making top seed. You'll be going in on the lower end of the top cut, especially with the asymmetrical top 16. But it does give you more of a chance to aim for those higher seeds, if not for the top cut, versus like going 6-1 and even going 4-0 in last season. The best you probably could have done is top 32.
Yeah. No, it gives people an opportunity to stretch for top 16. And that's what Pokemon wants, right? They're doing this asymmetrical top cut because they want to have the people fighting for 16 to 32 in the race in that last round. With 4 rounds, top 32, basically it was everyone from 32 to first was fighting for those spots. Anyone starting below table 16 had no chance. Like mathematically,
Yeah.
it wasn't there, so there was no point for those final rounds for a lot of players. With this fifth round, I think it gives more players an opportunity, but also what it does is gives more players an opportunity to kind of grow from their point threshold in the beginning of day 2.
And I think that's a good transition because for top 64 and better, they actually increased the point threshold, the amount of CP you get as well. So I believe if you make top 16 now, or sorry, top 8, you get 200 CP. Top 16 is like 160. So everything went up like a level.
Mm-hmm.
So going for even top 16, top 32, it means more now. So even if you go in X21, getting top 16, top 32, it adds so much to your CP threshold that it makes it worth it even if you don't make the top 8 cut,
Yep.
because you're getting a lot more CP for doing just as well at a tournament as you were last season.
Yeah, and I think that gives the higher end point placements more value.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. So adjustments with the Swiss tournament, with the point threshold, and speaking of the point of championship points, one thing that they are bringing back this season is the Ace Trainer reward system.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about this before. The Ace Trainer reward program. If you get 200 CP, you get the status of Ace Trainer, and you get some Pokemon things like you get some stuff in your live account. You get a special promo card. So they're bringing that back, but now players actually have time to schedule a way or plan a way to achieve that goal.
And I think part of it is we know it exists in the beginning of the season instead of the last quarter of the season. I think that's the bigger piece. Is they're still keeping the threshold at 200 points.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people would argue, well, it's easier to get 200 points now because the top 64 at events can get more points. I'm like, well, yeah, but 200 championship points is still not easy to do.
I can say that with experience.
Honestly, I haven't gotten more than 100 in a season when I competed. So it's one of those situations where I think this is fun.
Yeah.
And we will get more information on what the 2026 rewards will be during the 2026 season, because we don't need that information right now. All we need to know is that the program exists, the incentive exists, and we'll find out what the reward is later.
Exactly. So with all that, there's one more piece that arguably is the most impactful, most important change from the last season going to 2025, 2026. And this one's it's a pretty big one.
Oh yeah.
You and me have been talking about this ever since we got the announcement. And obviously if you're part of the community, you've heard this news. So Devin, why don't you let our listeners know what the new change is?
Absolutely. So with Trading Card Game, they are changing the end of round procedures. So there's going to be 2 major changes that's happening to this event mechanic of competitive play. First, we are no longer getting +3 turns. We're going to get a +1 turn. So each player will have 1 turn each after time is called to try to get a win con for the match, for the game and the match that they're in. Second,
and before we go on, to clarify, when time is called, whoever turn it is, they finish off their turn, and then their opponent responds, and that's it.
Yeah. And then secondly, they're on a clock. There is a 10-minute overtime clock that will be happening while this is happening. So with +3 turns, there was no time mechanic to it. It's however long 3 turns takes is however long it takes. With this new +1 overtime, it's you have 10 minutes to finish this. And that after 10 minutes, a decision has to be made. So with this, there's a couple of very important mechanical things that I think will be wrestled with for the first couple months of this implementation, because a lot of players have been used to +3 for almost the entire time competitive TCG has been around.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there's a couple things you and I have also talked about. There's concerns. There is issues. I think some individuals in the community have said, yes, this is nice, but was this necessary? So
Yeah.
a lot of questions for this, for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. Obviously, if people have been talking about this all week, in a face value, when you read this, makes perfect sense. I love it. If you've gone to any major event, you know how long these rounds can go. NEIC took about an hour and a half, if not more, just because we're waiting for the +3 turns, and you have the time extensions, and the stream went on forever.
Yeah.
It's funny, we're actually sitting in the venue, and they're like, we were waiting for one more table, and then we go into round 2, and we're all like, yes, it's the stream match. We're watching it right now.
Yeah.
But, so on a, I guess, logistical side, I can see why they made this change. It will theoretically, it will make the tournament shorter, because now it's 10 minutes max versus 15, 20, 30, however long it took to finish off the game. So if you're a part of a TO or tournament staff, this is rejoicing news for you. As a player, it changes habits. It changes how we look and play our game. I know an example would be me at NEIC. My first round, I've talked about this on the last podcast. I had 2 minutes to play game 3. And we went in with a gentleman's agreement because we knew 2 minutes wasn't enough. But we also both went in like we have the +3 to kind of set up board state and yada, yada, yada. Now we're down to +1. How does that impact what we do? Do we even do a gentleman's? Do we even play game 3? Or do we just say, hey, let's call it a tie? So there's a lot of, I say, habits that are going to be changing, and a lot of mindsets in how we pick a deck, play the deck, how we approach the tournament. All that's going to change starting next week.
Yeah, so I want to dig deeper into this. Like, I think this is such a important change to how tournaments of all levels are ran, that just saying, oh, you have to pick up a quicker deck, you're going to have to learn how to play quicker. I think saying that is giving a disservice to how important this change really is. So let's kind of go back at each piece and kind of look at why it's such an important piece, right? We've already kind of addressed upon. There's an obvious difference between a +3 and a +1. You're losing a turn each direction. So there's 2 turns of action that is getting missed for a win con to be met. Yes, that is significant. Yes, no one's going to say that's not going to change things. A piece of information I think you and I were talking about as we were trying to digest this before we went and kind of recorded our thoughts today is there's a couple lines in the article where I think you and I are not okay with the logic, where they say, after reviewing the data, they didn't determine that a +3 was necessary. I'm going to sit here and I hope Pokemon, I hope someone in TCPI, I hope a higher level organizer listens to what I'm about to say and can give me something, because I am an analytics guy. I love sports. I love what I do. My job is analytics and numbers. But I'm going to wave the bullshit flag. I'll be like, I doubt that during this season, during your regionals, and during your ICs, and then during your cups, you are asking judges, the TOs, to get data of 1, how many of your matches are going to time, and 2, how many of those matches are having a draw that go to time. I doubt it. Like, if you can show me and tell me this is how we did it, I'm not asking for the raw data. I'm not asking for the numbers. Honestly, if someone goes, yeah, we actually did, it was done at this regional, this regional, this regional, if you can explain the methodology, I would love to hear it. Because as a player who's been at events, and Dean, you went to several events this year, There's
Hmm.
too much happening in the hive and with the judges to where you're going to ask those particular slips to be set off to the side so someone can data analyze them.
Yeah, it seems like it is a lot. For those who don't know what we're saying, I'll actually read the blurb in the article because I have the article pulled up right in front of me. It says, so this is talking about changing from the +3 to the +1. This end around procedure creates complicated situations for event operations, which we briefly talked about. Since the +3 turn phase of a match technically has no time limit, which we will go into, it's been observed that competitors play differently during overtime and stretch out their turns, making round turnover unpredictable and significantly extending round times. We've concluded that the overtime procedure is not achieving its intended goal, with a significant percentage of matches still resulting in a draw after +3 turns. So that this is where we're kind of getting with, where are they getting this data? Because I've been to tournaments, I've staffed a tournament before at a major level, and unless they're not telling us stuff, which they could not, like we each have our own responsibilities, how are they analyzing this data? Like when slips are turned in, it's all in groupings. Like you don't know what table has gone to turn unless they just like stop a watch and like whatever's turned in at this point we're going to analyze. There's just too much going on to get the data and then make the event smooth
Yeah.
and move forward as well. I just feel like there's a lot that they're looking at. And like you said, if they just say this is the methodology and we've done it at X regionals, cool. We just didn't know that. And now we have a reasoning of why they made this change. But reading this as a player, I'm like, are you sure that this is really what happened? Because the +3 saved me so many times in playing in tournaments, both locally and at a major level.
I think here there's a lot of broad stroke stuff. Like you just read there's a lot of broad stroke statements in that what you read that little mini paragraph, right? Players
Yeah,
play differently. Well, no duh they play differently. There's a time event, and when time is called, time doesn't exist anymore. So they can play out slower. They can be more drawn out with their moves. They can be more intentional in their moves. They're not going to feel pressured. No crap. Like you're not saying anything different. To say that because there is no clock to it, we'll talk about the overtime clock portion in a minute. I've been a part of matches where when time is called, slow players go slow and fast players stay fast. A player who knows his deck and a player who plays at a higher speed is not going to suddenly become a slow player because time is called.
yeah.
And they will already have their win con mapped up in their head anyway.
It's like the only way I see that happening, and I'm guilty of this. Don't get me wrong. I've done this plenty of times. Is that I'm trying to figure out the pieces from my deck and my hand to get the win condition. And it's not like I'm playing slow to play slow. I'm playing slow with a end goal in mind of trying to maximize my odds and my outs to win the game. Because usually game 3 in time, there's a lot at stake. Like you're trying to get that win. And honestly, and from my experience, if we see that there's no way for either player to win, we usually just scoop it up and call it a draw. We're not wasting our time over nothing.
Exactly. And then the determination that each player losing a turn will not affect the outcome of the match, again, it's a flawed assumption. Where if they're going to, because what I really think happened is the data that they're drawing is, oh, we have X% of draws happening in our tournaments. And maybe if they were smart, they assumed that draws in round 8 and 9, or round 7 and 8 of day 1 were mostly IDs. Maybe they took some of those out. And they looked at rounds 1 through 6 and said, we had X% of our matches be draws, they would have been draws, because when time is called, they're theoretically still draws. Here's how many matches, and that was their methodology. Like there's so many data points that it seems flawed. The assumptions are wrong. It doesn't seem like they consulted players or people with playing mindsets. They were asking TOs their opinion, and the TOs went, well, if we got rid of end of turn, we may be able to get out 2 hours sooner. Like, it doesn't seem like the right people were consulted in this decision.
Yeah, and I get where they're coming from. I remember playing in Toronto 3 seasons ago. We start the tournament at 8 o'clock in the morning. We're out at 11 p.m. Now we're not that bad. We usually get out by 8 o'clock, even with the 9-round tournaments. But we're trying to respect everyone's time. I get it. But, like, is this the way to do it? Because now people are going to be over-analyzing, over-critical on pace of play. Like, don't get me wrong. We need to keep up a good tempo with your pace of play. But one way you can look at this is there's 2 ways that impacts your deck choices. You are now going to try to play a deck that's either faster, so you can play 3 games in 50 minutes, or one thing I didn't really think about until I was talking to someone, you're going to pick a deck that's basically a best of 1 deck. You play a super long game 1, you win that game 1, and you're manipulating game 2 to where I know that there's no +3 anymore. If I can just get it to end of turns, I got this game and I got the win.
Yeah, it's either you play super fast or you play super slow. And when we say playing super slow, we're not talking about like slow play manipulation. We're talking long, drawn out turns. So probably more evolution focused decks, more decks that involve deck searches, more decks that involve long, drawn out combos. And those are good. I'm not saying anything bad about those decks. So that's a win con. Like, I played in a format where turn 1 against Night March, I would just pull my phone out and just play on my phone and wait for 10 minutes to be like, are you done yet? And I wasn't trying to be mean to my opponent. I just knew if I was playing against a certain deck, I could just scroll on Facebook for 10 minutes and know that my turn wasn't missed. Because those turns were drawn out because there's so many deck searches. They were Ultra Balling 3 times. They were doing double Battle Compressor. They were getting their energy. They were double checking their discard pile. Like, there's just a lot of things that certain decks do that take up time. And then there's going to be the inverse of super aggressive. I see the return of big basic decks where it's just going to be like, all right, I have a basic EX Pokemon with 150 to 180 HP. I'm going to power this sucker up and go. And Pokemon historically love big basics. Think of the Tag Team GX era. They love big basics because they're quick games. But they're also expensive cards to get. So there is a different aspects of some people kind of like criticizing on that one. So I'd be very interested to see what happens. We know Mega Pokemon are coming. We know Mega Pokemon are going to be evolution Pokemon.
And there's some that are basic.
Basic, but they're going to be basic evolutions.
No. Mega Latias EX got released. That is a basic Pokemon.
I haven't seen
that. That will be another episode, so we'll get more into the Mega sets probably in a couple months once we get more info about them. But yes, I agree with you. It's you're either going to go play like most likely a big basic deck, or you're playing something that's more involved. And we're not saying it's very easy to say like, oh, playing Guardy or playing something that has a lot of evolutions. They're slow playing. They're drawing out their turns on purpose. It's very easy to go that direction with this argument, but all we can do is assume that players are playing within the rights and rules of the game. So that keeping up tempo, keeping pace of play at a very reasonable rate, and even then, you're going to time just because evolution decks take a little longer to set up and play out their strategy, and there's more pieces to it. And lately, a lot of the evolution decks are single prize. So you're taking one prize at a time, and that does take time as well. So even if you're playing really fast, you're still going to go to time. And I was talking to my buddy that we played with NEIC. We made the most aggressive form of Joltik box that we could think of. We both went to time in every single one of our games because the format is just that way. Gardevoir exists, Marnie Grimstall exists, decks are a little slower. So now you get to getting rid of the +3 and just going to +1. Are people going to scoop quick enough? Are they going to recognize, should we even continue this over time? Or should we just get the draw? And I think that's what Pokemon's looking for. It's like, unless there's one condition on board, just sign the slip and let's go. Let's move on with the tournament.
And I want to touch on the slow play argument, right? Because in the article, they talk about this overtime clock, where the overtime clock intentionally is long compared to the average turn length, with the hope that this clause will trigger only extreme situations where slow play penalties may already be considered and applied where appropriate. So when it comes to this end of match procedures now, there is this 10-minute clock, but they're assuming that prior to this 10-minute clock, if there's slow play concerns, those slow play concerns are already being addressed prior to end of match procedures. And I think that's misguided optimism to how players react to situations. Because I think players are more likely to allow opponent to play more drawn out turns and more drawn out thought process when the clock is active versus when there's end of game procedures.
Yeah.
So they're going to now have a 10-minute overtime. So imagine the NFL's new rule, right? The NFL just implemented a new overtime rule where every team gets an opportunity to possess the ball. That's what Pokemon's going to allow. Each player is going to have an opportunity to win the game, but you have 10 minutes to do so. But what happens, and you and I were talking about this, what happens when player A on turn 0 just eats up 8.5 minutes of that overtime clock? And they do nothing illegal. They just have a very long, drawn-out turn. And then player B only gets 90 seconds to try to create a win con? How is that fair?
Exactly. And it's, what do you do in that situation? And this is something I'm going to talk to my local professors about. Once you hit that 10-minute mark, is the game done? Or does whoever turn it is, do you give them an opportunity to attack? Like, what determines what ends the game? Because, like you said, like, what if player A takes 8-9 minutes? That leaves player B with 1 minute? That's not fair. And we're assuming that no one's doing anything illegal or manipulated with the time clock. Some decks just take long turns, and we understand that and we recognize that. So there's going to be there's going to be a learning curve with this new rule. And I'm glad it starts next week, because one thing we haven't really talked about is everything we've been saying about our arguments have been applied to a major tournament, regionals or above. What about your locals? Because this rule applies to your challenges and cups as well. Yeah. And those are best of 1.
Best of 1 30 minutes. So in a best of 1 30 minute, I mean, ideally in 30 minutes should be enough time for a player to get to a single win con in 1 game. Ideally. You and I have both been a part of 30-minute best of 1s going to time plenty of times. So that's, again, it's a false assumption. But it's one of those situations where I think you brought this up to me when we were trying to figure and kind of get to the rationale. They want a more uniform player experience. And what we're getting to that is, Dean, you mentioned Japan is best of 1 with this +1. That's how they've been running their events for years.
Exactly, yep.
So this is just another example of Pokemon trying to make everything uniform. We've been getting small baby sets year over year over year, block systems, silver border cards, trying to line up the sets, and now we're getting end game mechanics being the same. So it's one of those situations where this upcoming year is going to be a very much a pilot program of end game procedures. I don't see them getting rid of it, but I see them adjusting it to where players can be more familiar with end game procedures. So when Worlds comes, every player understands how end game procedures happens because it's the same end game procedure for everyone.
Yeah, and one distinction between how we play versus TBC regions, not just Japan but Korea, Indonesia,
Taiwan, yeah.
etc. They don't have ties, and I
Yes.
think that's a big distinction because we do have ties. So if they finish the game, they do their +1. If they don't conclude that match, both players get a game loss.
Yeah, it's a double loss.
Yeah. So a lot of times you'll see players concede
Yeah.
in Japan because a double loss doesn't do anything. They rather have someone have the win than both of them have the loss.
Yeah, because isn't it certain tournaments in Japan when you get your second loss, you're kicked out of the event?
3. Once you
Yeah,
hit 3, you're out.
Yeah.
They don't even parry you anymore.
Yeah. So I don't see our events going that route. It would
No.
be bonkers to watch regionals just get into this modified feeder. Like it's just going to be this pyramid or every round. You have 2 rounds, and then you start thinning the field out until you get the finals. Like that would be kind of cool, but I don't see regionals ever being like that in the Western world by any means.
No, they won't do that because they understand they want people to play.
Yeah.
But I brought that up because it goes with deck selection and how you play your deck. While we still get ties, some people may be okay with a tie. That is 1 point versus 3, but it's still a point versus gain 0.
Yeah.
So yes, this is going to be a learning curve. It starts next week. I know in my local league, I offered the idea. I'm like, hey, next week's our free week. We have nothing going on. It's just casual play. Let's create some simulations to where we're going to practice the new end rule changes.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, this may be something that you and your friends or you and your league may want to consider because this is a big adjustment. And if you're starting your tournaments next week or week after, players need that time to kind of reset their mindset of how you play a deck.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. It's a big deal. The overtime clock, the lack of turns, two less turns, 10-minute hard clock, the disincentiveness of draws. I get it; they don't want draws. I think the only way to really get away and get around that is doing exactly what Japan does and turn a draw into a double loss. If you don't want draws in these tournaments at all levels, make a draw a double loss. Make it a punishment. We make a joke. Taking a draw too early in a tournament, you puts yourself in purgatory where you're just stuck with slower players and slower players. Make everything a double loss.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a longer term. If you're trying to speed up the tournaments, I think that is more of an appropriate answer than getting rid of end of match procedures or changing end of match procedures.
Yeah, we'll see how the 2026 season goes. Does this rule apply for Worlds? Because Worlds was in a different format.
The World's Championship is not a part of the 2026 season.
So they'll still have +3. So after that, the majors will go into this new format. Is that correct?
I would take that assumption because the 2025 World Championship is a qualifying event for the 2026 World Championship.
Okay. But I guess Pokemon will make an announcement and give clarification on that if needed. So obviously it doesn't affect you or me. We are not going to World, but we both know people that are. So if you are listening to this and you did make World, I will try to reach out to your local professor and see if they can get an answer for you, because obviously that will affect your preparation.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot to digest. A lot of opinions. Um,
And the reason why we didn't record it the day it came out is that I had told Dean, I go, I want time to digest this,
yeah,
to read it, to look over it, to reflect on it. Him and I have had multiple conversations about it leading up to today, to where we were trying to figure out the rationale, which is why we made some of the claims we did today, where we're like, this makes no sense. We don't feel that this has been the filters are through the right people, because it doesn't. Was it you said Mahomes said in an interview a couple of days, like in the middle of all this process, and he goes, on paper this looks great, in practice this does not actually solve a problem.
yeah.
So, and I feel the same. I feel that sentiment where it's like, this is cool and all, but are we addressing the right thing? Or are we just trying to make the tournaments go faster by cutting in a game instead of punishing the what makes things slower? That's the question that needs to be asked.
And I think that's going to be a little more like people will need to dive in more of the data. And I think this year they really should do case studies, actually take the data and see it was this the proper correction to make, and if so, great, we have the data to prove it. If not, what is causing this? And then maybe let's move to a system like Japan. Let's bring back the +3, but do something different. We'll see how this is. Never, no two season is ever alike.
Yep.
So there will be changes for the 2027 season, like for sure. So we'll see. We just got this news. It's fresh. Well, kind of fresh. It's been a couple days for us. But like you said, it's a lot to digest. And the season starting next week, we have to digest fast.
Yeah. And you're just going to have to react. Players are just going to have to react to in-game procedures. They may or may not like what's happening. They just have to figure out what's going to be best for them in tournaments. A challenge, a cup, a regional, they all will be treated differently, as they should, because different time constraints and different point values. So as a player, your deck choice is going to matter probably more than ever. And your play method is going to matter more than ever. If you are historically a slower player, you will be scrutinized.
Yes.
So either learn to play fast, learn to play your deck fast, or just make sure that you're cognizant of the fact that you need to be intentional but be quicker. Because players will call professors quicker on you because they have less time to play.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes starting next week. Let us know how your experiences are. See how your local scene is. I know I'll be reporting about mine. We've already have our challenges and cups scheduled, or at least we're talking about it. So we'll see. But this does show that they are listening to players and that they're taking our opinions, our voice into consideration. And I kind of want to end this kind of discussion about announcements on a little brighter note with how Pokemon's listening. Because just today alone, a player that was tied for 125th, he actually ended at 126. He was like, "Man, I bubbled out on my invite," and he wasn't saying anything bad. He was like, "I get it. This is a goal for me for next season. It stinks that I'm the guinea pig. I kind of was shown I'm the reason. Like now we know what to do for next season." So it was like, "This is cool. I kind of wish." And he was just like venting, and people saw this. They They reached out to Pokemon via Twitter, and like 3 hours later, he got an email saying, "Congratulations, welcome to the World Championships." So everyone that bubbled that at that top 125 that had the same CP, Pokemon listened, they heard their concerns, and like, this is justifiable enough. Let's invite these people because it's not really a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that Pokemon listened and that they made a couple people's day today.
Yeah, and I'm glad they did the right thing, but I'm also glad that the player at 126 understood that, you know what? I put myself in this position because I finished where I finished. I'm very curious on how that comment section went, where they were just trying to roast Pokemon and try to bully Pokemon into what is the quote unquote the right thing to do. Because at the very beginning of the season, everyone knew the line was a hard line. So trying to bully Pokemon into doing the right thing probably isn't what I don't think that rewarding the mob is the best way of going about this. With the way the timeline of the story is going, I feel like Pokemon already had their decision made. And they didn't just magically decide to email him 3 hours later. I think the decision was already made and that they were going to go and invite him anyway. So it's great that they did the right thing. This is a great story that the player was understanding of the rules and the limitations and where he put himself in. I really hope that the mob doesn't feel like, and this is the Pokemon community, you and I have both been a part of this community for a very long time. I really hope the people who are doing this the wrong way don't think that this is how they get what they want.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't want to like mention that part, because I really wanted to focus on like he recognized, like I knew something, we all knew this was a possibility, and he was like, it just stinks that I am the person to prove this.
Yeah.
And then he was like, oh heck yeah, now I can go. He wasn't expecting that.
Mm-hmm.
He was actually fully like, I know what to do for next season. Now I know how I can do better. It just stinks that I was the 126 that bubbled.
No, and that's why I think Pokemon ended up doing the right thing, because they probably already had a decision made. And I give the player in question kudos for being mature about the consequences of finishing in 126th. So I am excited for those players. They got the opportunity because they got really, really close. It's, again, this asymmetrical thing that they're trying to do, that everyone tied at a certain point gets an opportunity to play. That's awesome. I really hope that the hive mind doesn't think that this is how they need to get what they want. But I'm glad that those players get to have a World Championship experience. So they did the right thing. Pokemon did the right thing, and I think Pokemon was always going to do the right thing. And I want to give Pokemon credit when credit is due as well.
Yeah. So that's enough announcements for this week. A lot going on with Pokemon. But you know what? This game isn't about announcements. This isn't about how we can go to a tournament. This is about playing fun decks and seeing during this fun time in June, what can we play that's different. So I think let's talk about this week's Rogue Deck of the Week.
Absolutely. And I think when you said play something different, it's going to be very fun, because over the next 2 weeks, you and I both picked Team Rocket decks.
Yes.
And we definitely went 2 completely different directions with this. And I'm not talking like 1 or 2 Pokemon, maybe a supporter line different. Like, the Team Rocket archetype with this Destined Rival set is so big. We were able to do completely 2 different types of decks with the same Pokemon subcategory.
Exactly, yeah. And for me, I saw this play out on stream at NEIC, and this is actually something me and the people that went to the tournament with, we were talking about. I'm like, I've never seen this. And they're like, really? This is like the main way you play Team Rocket now? I'm like, really? I've been seeing like you play 3 Mewtwo's, you play a couple Spidops, and you maybe have the Mimikyu in there just because. And I've been playing several games with this. I've actually almost got done with the showcase video with this list. But I am calling this the Team Rocket's Toolbox. It's probably more of a Team Rocket Spidops deck, but I like the Toolbox name better.
And there are so many different cards. Like, I want listeners, while we're talking about this deck, go back to our set review video for Destined Rivals, and pretty much every single Team Rocket card that Dean and I talked about during that video is in this deck.
Exactly. So my inspiration was the Team Rocket Spidops list that made day 2. It didn't get high. It got like 300th place, but it made day 2. So I took the core of that. I've only made a couple changes to it. One change that I made was they played 2 Mimikyus. I took out 1 Mimikyu and put it in the Wobbuffet. And what the Wobbuffet does, it's a basic psychic Pokemon, and it has an attack where you can move damage on one of your bench Pokemon to your opponent's active Pokemon. Mm-hmm. And for me, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. because you play one of Mewtwo EX in this list, and it's pretty bulky. So if they can't one-shot that thing, you can retreat it, put up the Wobbuffet, and then move all the damage from the Wobbuffet or from the Mewtwo to whatever Pokemon you're going against. And one, you're doing a lot of damage at once, and two, you're healing Pokemon on your bench as well. So
Yeah,
I thought that was really cool.
and the
I love
Spidops has a pretty chunky HP for a basic stage 1 as well, or a single prize stage 1 as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's 130, so it's not getting knocked out with Torrential Pump if you're going against Terrabox. It takes more than 2 attacks for Dragapult to hit it, and that's if Dragapult can't hit it because you do play Articuno, but the Articuno only blocks basic Pokemon, which for the most part your deck is basic Pokemon, but the Spidops. But the Spidops is the star of this deck. It hits hard. I didn't realize the potential of the Spidops until playing this. I'm like, oh, I'm doing 180. And I'm doing 180 consistently. And I have a single prize board state. Oh, this is fun. I like this.
180 is a grass attacker that can accelerate to itself, which actually call Spidops what it is. It is a consistent damage output machine that hits the right type of weakness.
Oh, yeah. With Grimmsnarl being out there, with Charizard coming back into the meta, you're hitting for weakness that way. What if you're going against other decks? You're hitting 180, you're two-shotting everything in the format. While they're taking 1 prize, you're taking 2. One play I actually did that I love was I was going against a Dragapult deck, and I'm winning on the knockouts because once it gets something set up, I will Giovanni bring it up and I'll slow them down enough. And once they did get set up, I'm like, oh, that's cute. Bring up the Mimikyu, Team Rocket Energy, copy, take out their Badoo, put 30 damage on their Pheasantipity, and I had another attacker set up on my bench. I'm like, okay, you take a prize, promote my Spidops, Giovanni, your Fez with 30 damage on there, put up my Mimikyu, retreat the Mimikyu, bring back the Spidops, 180 for exact damage.
Yeah.
2 prizes game.
And that's the thing. The Articuno prevents the Dragapult spread. It hits grass weakness. It has Mimikyu to copy Terra attack, so it copies the Dragapults. It copies the Charizards. It copies a lot of things for basically just 2 energy. And it can pivot as a free retreater. The Wobbuffet.
One other card is the Murkrow.
That was a Torment?
Torment, yeah, you can shut down your opponent's attack. And a lot of the main attacks in some of the decks you will come up, it's the only attack on that Pokemon. So, Make It Rain? Nah, they're not going to do anything. Burning Rain? Nah, you have to retreat your Charizard again. Oh, you want to attack with Dragapult? Cool, I'll take away your Phantom Dive and you're only doing 70 to me. Try again.
Yeah, no, exactly. I love this deck. I love the Pokemon. I think that I was excited for this Team Rocket archetype probably before a lot of other people were. I just never got an opportunity to play it yet, and I'm glad that someone put the right cards together to make and kind of show off what this can do. Because a lot of people are like, oh, Team Rocket's all about the Mewtwo. Nope. There's one Mewtwo in here, that's cool and all, but it's not about the Mewtwo. There's other stars to this set.
I have not used it. In the games I've played, if it's on my bench, it's there to power up the Spidops. It's a cool... I have a way to attack with it, but playing the single prize board state is so much better. You have a lot of ways, a lot of outs, and it's just so much fun. I've been having a blast playing with this. I can't wait to finish off this week's showcase and show just how much fun this was. My league is actually doing a rogue deck night this week, and this was one of my considerations. You just hit hard, you have right weakness, and it's just fun. Yeah. I've really been enjoying this deck.
No, when we saw it make day 2 at North American International, we're like, okay, this has legitimacy. And I'm glad that you are having fun with it. It looks like a great deck, like I said. It is a archetype that is entirely built from the Destined Rivals set, so this is a deck that can just grow over time. I don't think it can get better because it is so centric within its own set, where it is Team Rocket everything, but it can't get worse unless it just has bad type matchup. The only way this deck gets bad is if the grass weakness becomes not viable anymore.
Yeah, I would say playing this with how much Dragapult is out there, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but I would like to put a Lily's Clefairy in here just to guarantee some knockouts with the Mimikyu. But that's if like that's end game, you need to knock it out to win. But other than that, it's a liability.
It's a liability you can never attack with, so
yeah. So unless you change up the energy count.
yeah.
But that's the only thing I would say. But this is really fun. We'll have the list in the show notes, and also on Friday we will release the video for it. So please keep an eye out for that. And as we get to the end of the episode, just want to say thank you all for listening and watching the YouTube video. We are on our way to get 100 subscribers. Once we hit 100 subscribers on the YouTube channel, we will do a special Rogue Deck Tournament of Champions where we will pick 8 decks that we have featured on this channel in the standard format. And me and my friends will just do a fun little tournament just to show them off with an IRL play.
Yep.
So please subscribe, tell your friends about us. We love doing this. Granted, like we weren't expecting today's episode, so but we love talking about Pokemon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like these decks are always fun to play. The sets are just getting better and better. I really do love diving deep into these sets and finding these fun little archetypes that you and I get to showcase. Pokemon is giving us more and more news to talk about, especially in the summer, where it's historically just a slower period for the game. And getting ready for a new season is always really fun. And getting ready for that 2026 grind. I don't participate in the tournaments as much as Dean does, but it's one of those. It's great to see the changes, and everyone gets to start anew, starting on the 1st of July. So let's see how everyone's season goes and what plans they are making for the future.
Exactly. So please like and subscribe to this video. Listen to us on all our platforms. Keep an eye out for our Rogue Deck videos. And with all that being said, Devin, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners and viewers today?
No, I'm good. Like I said, the new season's starting. I hope everyone's going to create plans and goals for the next season. I'm excited to see what everyone does.
Exactly. And we'll have an episode where we talk about our goals for the season and what we would like to see in Pokemon and with ourselves. But that's a future episode. But until then, thank you for listening and watching to the Rogue Deck Chronicles. And as always, have fun playing those sneaky decks.
Bye, guys.